Okay, ready? Redwall. We're in part 1, chapter 20. Now remember, um, Matthias had just freed the Vole family and met Basil Stag Hare, who has taken them back to his house to rest. And he's on his way back to the Abbey. And Ch1 is looking for a way over the wall. So, anyway, here we go. Chapter 20. It was late afternoon. There had been one or two minor setbacks, but Ch1 and his squad had finally made it up into the elm tree. Some of the rats were really hopeless climbers in Ch1's estimation. There had been quite a bit of jostling and slipping, and as far as for that idiot cheese thief, imagine waiting until you were 6 meters above ground to find out that you were afraid and had no head for heights. Ch1 thought angrily that if there hadn't been such an urgent need for silence, he'd have given him a what for. The warlord began to wish that he had brought along more ferrets and weasels. They possessed good natural climbing ability, and that weasel, what was his name? Scrag. He'd been an enormous help, boosting and encouraging the others, even organizing the lifting of the plank. Ch1 made a mental note for future reference. Officer material, that one. Despite all efforts, however, they were still below the edge of the parapet. Higher up the elm, branches became thin and whippy, not strong enough to support the plank's weight. Ch1 took stock of the situation. This was really as far as he could go, while still retaining some kind of safety factor on their hazardous assignment. He decided to call a halt. Right, take a breather. Find somewhere that you won't fall from. In an hour or two it'll be evening. There'll be lots of shadow and less daylight. The mice will have slowed up a bit by then. We'll catch them off guard. Scrag, see this lot keep still and quiet, will you? Scrag saluted smartly and offered a helpful comment. This branch I'm sitting on, Chief, it's just been testing it, and it feels good and strong. Maybe we should mount the plank from here to the wall. It'll reach easily enough. I know it's a bit of an uphill climb, but it shouldn't be too difficult. I don't fancy those branches higher up. They're too thin. Ch1 climbed across and sat next to Scrag. He spoke in a whisper. Good thinking, Weasel. Yes, this branch'll do fine. Stick by me, Scrag. You're a useful soldier. With some of the blockheads I've got around me, I could be on the lookout for a new captain soon. You know what that means. Extra loot, a bigger share of the plunder. Ch1 always rewards initiative, Scrag. Play your cards right, and you'll soon get promoted. Thanks, Chief. Don't worry, I won't let you down, Scrag murmured. On a lower branch, Cheese Thief, who had been eavesdropping on the conversation, sneered inwardly. Yes, Chief. No, Chief. 3 bags full, Chief. Who did that snotty weasel think he was? And as for Ch1 promoting a weasel to captain over rats of his own kind, well, Redtooth and Darkclaw and the others might have something to say about that. Upstart weasel. He'd only joined a day or two ago. If he got half the chance, Cheese Thief would fix Scrag all right. Abbot Mortimer looked thankfully up at the sky. Evening had come. They had lasted out well. The rats had not breached the wall in any way. Most of the main fighting had gone into a lull, and Ch1's hordes were only making spasmodic sallies from the ditch anyhow. Taking advantage of the interval, the defenders hauled up more rocks and rubble to the ramparts. Excuse me. Cornflower and her band of helpers were on top of the walls. Keeping their heads low, they moved from post to post, serving each creature with a bowl of stew, some wild grapes, and a small loaf of honeyed nut bread. What a calm, efficient young mouse Cornflower is, the abbot remarked to Constance. The badger passed a bundle of arrows to Ambrose Spike for distribution as she replied, Aye, that she is, Father Abbot, but she looks worried. Matthias, do you think? Doubtless, said the abbot dryly. That young mouse is on my mind as well as hers and yours. Constance shook her large striped head. It's not like Matthias to go off like that. I've searched everywhere in my spare moment, but he is not in the abbey. Well, wherever he is, the abbot replied, I'm certain that he is helping our cause, so we'll just have to wait his return and trust to Matthias's judgment and good sense. The two friends thankfully accepted food from Cornflower and her helpers. Both watched, mystified, as Winifred, the otter, and the foremoll hoisted and pulled a seesaw into view. It was a plaything made in the distant past for the use of infant woodlanders. It had lain near the strawberry patch for as long as anyone could remember. Baby animals played on it throughout the year. As a seesaw, it was in perfect working order. Winifred and four moles set it down on the parapet. Bent double, two moles staggered up, carrying between them an enormous rock. The four mole indicated the opposite end of the seesaw. Ah, perm there, that's a nice boulder, my beauties. When the boulder was in position, Winifred and Formal hugged each other tightly. With a nod, they jumped heavily on the near seat. Whoosh! The big rock catapulted over the top of the parapet. Several seconds of silence followed. Then there was a crash, accompanied by screams of pain and shock from the rats packed into the ditch below. Winifred and Formal gravely shook paws. Yep, I reckon them pesky varmints got a headache, chuckled the Formal as everyone on the ramparts ran to seek cover from the retaliatory missiles hurled by Clooney's horde. The battle had started again in earnest. Mouse archers sprang up and loosed their shafts down towards the ditch. Otter sling throwers whipped hard pebbles off with fierce rapidity. Long rat javelins flew upwards, causing death and injury in the ranks of the defenders. But now there was a new hazard. Some inventive rat had devised a fearsome weapon. Chunks of iron grave railings from the churchyard strung to lengths of cord. The rats would swing the cord round and round, gaining momentum until, judging the right direction, they loosed the cord. The missiles sped upwards, 2 or 3 times higher than the wall, almost out of sight, and then they would plummet downwards, whistling viciously, to burst on the ramparts. Any defender struck by a missile was either instantly killed or horribly maimed. Even if the iron missed its target, the stones and shattered metal fragments ricocheted about dangerously. Realizing the danger of this new device, Constant ordered all but a chosen few to leave the wall for the safety of the abbot grounds. However, the strong iron bits soon proved to be a two-edged weapon. Many that were released wrongly came hurtling back down on the ditch, sometimes slaying the very creatures that hurled them. Even Redtooth, in Clooney's armor, guarding the standard in the meadow, had to make an undignified scurry to avoid being hit, but he could see the demoralizing effort the missiles were having on the defenders, so he ordered the throwers to continue. Constance bravely stood her ground on the parapet, as did her small band of picked fighters. Whenever one of the missiles landed intact on the rubble pile, she would seize it, standing in full view as she whirled the corded iron round and round, releasing it in a blur of speed. Constance was a far more powerful and accurate thrower than any rat. The attackers bared angry fangs at her from the cover of the ditch. Of all the Redwall defenders, the big badger was the one they most hated and feared. Seated in the branches of the elm tree at the north wall of the abbey, Clooney watched the shadows lengthen. To the west, the sky was crimson with sunset. Soon he would raise the plank on the parapet. Then let them beware! No tin-pot order of mice was going to stand against the might of Clooney the Scourge. Methuselah, the gatekeeper, stood facing the damaged tapestry in the great wall of Redwall. Being too old for active battle service, he reasoned that the best way he could serve his order was by putting his fertile brain to work. Somewhere there had to be at least a clue, a single lead that might tell him where the resting place of Martin the warrior could be found. or where he could regain possession of the ancient sword for his abbey. But where? Every now and then, over the years, Methuselah had searched through Redwall for Martin and his sword. Now he stepped up his questing activities, alas, with no success. Vital clues and answers still eluded him. What he needed was a younger, fresher mind to assist him. What a pity that Matthias could not be found. Now there was a young mouse with a head on his shoulders. Long years and much mental strain had taken their toll on the ancient mouse. Wearily he swayed on his feet, and putting out a paw to steady himself, he touched the wall, the exact patch of stone over which Martin's likeness had once hung. Methuselah gave a sigh of satisfaction and allowed a small smile to creep across his features. His search had not been in vain. Beneath his paw there was writing carved into the dust-covered wall. Oh boy. Let's see now. I think we have time for another chapter. We're starting in part 2. It's called The Quest. Chapter 1. Matthias came awake slowly. He blinked, yawned, and stretched his body luxuriously. The sun was setting, turning the little stream into a flow of molten red and gold tinged with deep shadow. He lay calm, savoring the peace and quiet of the woodland summer evening. Reality struck him like a thunderbolt. He sprang to his feet, instantly forgetting the beauty that surrounded him, lying there snoring and sleeping like a lazy little idiot, and all the while Redwall Abbey and his friends were under attack. Furious with himself, Matthias strode off angrily into the darkening trees. He could find no words strong enough to express his self-contempt. It was not until he had blundered and crashed along his way for some time, wildly upbraiding himself, that he calmed down with the realization that he was well and truly lost. No tree, path, or landmark looked remotely familiar. He despaired of ever seeing Redwall again. Night closed in on the small mouse wandering alone in the depths of mossflower woods. Strange imaginary shapes flitted about in the gloom. Eerie cries pierced the still air. Trees and bushes reached out with their branches to catch and scratch like living things with claws. Trembling, Matthias took refuge in an old beech trunk that had once been riven by lightning. Gradually, he became critical of himself again, the great warrior, frightened of the dark like a baby church mouse. From somewhere overhead, he heard a scratching noise. Summoning all his courage, he banished his fears. Drawing Shadow's dagger, he stepped out onto the open, calling aloud in what he hoped was a gruff voice. "Who's doing all that scratching and scraping? Come out and show yourself if you are a friend. But if it's a rat out there, you'd best start running, otherwise you'll have to deal with me, Matthias, the warrior of Redwall." Having spoken his piece, Matthias felt his confidence surge back. He stood tense and alert. However, he received no answer, save the mocking echo of his own voice ringing back at him through the dark woodlands. A slight noise at his back caused Matthias to wheel about with the dagger upraised. He found himself confronted by a baby red squirrel. It gazed at him curiously, sucking noisily on its paw. Matthias practically dropped the dagger through laughing so much. So this was the nameless terror that had stalked the night. The tiny creature continued to suck its paw, shifting from foot to foot, its bushy tail curled over its small back, higher than the tips of his ear. Matthias stooped. He spoke gently for fear of frightening the infant. "Hello there. My name's Matthias. What's yours?" The baby squirrel continued sucking on its paw. "Do your mommy and daddy know you are out?" It nodded its head. "Are you lost, little one?" It shook its head. "Do you talk?" It shook its head. "Do you often—" Oh, sorry. It shook its head. No. "Do you talk?" It shook its head. "Do you often wander about like this at night?" It nodded. Matthias smiled disarmingly. He threw his paws open wide. "I'm lost," he said. The paw sucking continued without comment. I come from Redwall Abbey. Suck, suck, suck. Do you know where that is? The baby squirrel nodded. Matthias was overjoyed. Oh, my little friend, please, could you show me the way? He asked. It nodded. Thank you very much. The tiny squirrel hopped and shuffled a short way into the wood. Turning to Matthias, it took its paw from its mouth and beckoned him to follow. He needed no second urging. Suck, suck, suck. Well, at least, Matthias thought aloud, if I lose sight of this fellow, I'll be able to hear him. The baby squirrel smiled and nodded and sucked. Okay. I think next time we'll save chapter 2. That's a big, long chapter. We'll save that for next time. Until then.